Good morning. Today, we pause to give thanks. Throughout the nation on Thursday, families and friends will gather to commemorate the Thanksgiving holiday in distinctive ways. In this particular year, given travel restrictions and continuing concern about the virus, many of our own beloved traditions will have to be amended or abandoned. And yet, as good and dedicated people have done throughout this year, we will adjust. We will make meaning and joy despite disappointment and challenge. Because in spite of what has been different and difficult, we have persisted in purposeful, admirable ways. And there is much, much for all of us to be thankful for. While this week may not include plane travel, town-wide turkey trots, or parades, it may still include football and funny stories, prayers, and post-dinner naps, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie. And gathering places across the country, mostly in homes, mostly around family tables, there will be a moment at least when some version of thanks will be offered. People will give thanks. We will give thanks. Our national holiday stems from Abraham Lincoln's declaration of the need for one during the Civil War. The tradition on the fourth Thursday in November traces its roots to Franklin Roosevelt's declaration of the same, back in the 30s in the wake of the Great Depression. There is a good deal for which we should be thankful. As you will hear from others today, each of us has a bundle of blessings for which we ought to be grateful. As you've heard me say before, the only thing wrong with Thanksgiving as a holiday is that it may suggest that this is the only time to give thanks, or at least the most important. Each day, virtually each hour offers an occasion for gratitude. When we imagine how blessed we are for the country in which we live, for the freedoms and opportunities we have as Americans, for our families and friends, for this community and others, for intelligence and discernment and deep feeling, for our gifts and aspirations, for good sense and hoped-for dreams. Indeed, we should live with an attitude of gratitude. Those you know who are truly grateful and express it regularly are not only legitimately acknowledging those undeserved graces, even unexpected graces, but living happier lives. And in their expressions of gratitude, they are making others happy. Only those who are pathologically hubristic would fail to recognize the gifts we are given and the opportunity, no, the obligation we have to acknowledge them. While I can imagine the origin of our national holiday in what was a more homogeneous country at the time was to give thanks to God. And for many, that will still be the focus of their gratitude. This holiday, more broadly interpreted, offers a reminder that we ought to offer thanks to countless people who, in their compassion and sacrifice and generosity, make our lives better. In this challenging year in particular, let us extend our thanks to nurses and doctors, first responders, grocery store clerks, municipal workers, and closer to home, our own faculty and staff, who have sacrificed and risked their own well-being in order to guarantee all of us the chance to get together today and in person since the 1st of September, to teach and learn, to grow and change, to offer companionship and joy. So as has become our tradition, I ask each of you to take out your cell phone, if you have one and it's with you, and to text someone who deserves your thanks. You can explain later. Just a simple thank you to that person will do for now. And I hope that each of us over the next few days will bother to thank others on this holiday who have made a difference. Go ahead, send the text. Thank you to all of you. My phone is ringing off the hook. Thanks so much for that. As we turn our heads and hearts to the proposition of gratitude, I hope this morning's hall will be meaningful and helpful. For me, I simply say thank you to all of you for forging this nurturing community, for persisting remarkably over these last 9 months, and for offering friendships to the likes of me. And now could we please move on to our litany of thanksgiving. Almighty God, from whom cometh every good and perfect gift, we call to remembrance thy loving kindness and thy tender mercies, which have ever been of old, and with grateful hearts we would lift up to thee the voice of our thanksgiving. For all the gifts which thou hast bestowed upon us, for the life thou hast given us, and the world in which we live. For these thy gifts, we praise thee, O God.
For the work we are enabled to do, and for the truth we are permitted to learn, for whatever of good there has been in our lives, for all the hopes and aspirations which lead us onwards to better things, for these, thy gifts.
We praise thee, O God.
For the order and constancy of nature, for the beauty and bounty of the world, for day and night, summer and winter, seed time and harvest, for the varied gifts of loveliness and use which every season brings, for these thy gifts.
We praise thee, O God.
For the autumn with all its glories, for the harvest with its boundless store, for all the fruits of the earth that golden sustain the life of man, for these thy gifts.
We praise thee, O God.
For all the comforts and gladness of life, for our homes and all our home blessings, for our friends and all the pure pleasures of social interaction, for these thy gifts.
We praise thee, O God. For all the discipline of life, for the tasks and trials by which we are trained to patience, self-knowledge, and self-conquest, for all the circumstances which bring us into closer sympathy with our suffering brethren, for troubles which have lifted us nearer thee, for these thy gifts. We praise thee, O God.
For the sacred and tender ties which bind us to the unseen world, for the faith which dispels the shadows of earth and fills the saddest and the last moments of life with the light of an immortal hope. For these thy gifts.
We praise thee, O God. God of all grace and love, we have praised thee with our lips. Grant that we may also praise thee in consecrated and faithful lives. To thy honor and glory. Amen. We are grateful to have with us this morning Delia Amuna, a clinical professor of law at Harvard Law School and the faculty deputy director of the law school's Criminal Justice Institute. Through the Institute, Professor Amuna supervises third-year law students in their representation of adult and juvenile clients in criminal and juvenile proceedings in Massachusetts courts, including the Supreme Judicial Court. Her teaching and her research focus on criminal law, criminal defense, mass incarceration, and issues of race. Professor Amuna coaches Harvard Law's National Criminal Justice Trial Advocacy and his Black Law Student Association trial teams, and has led both the numerous regional and national awards. Prior to joining Harvard, Professor Amuna spent several years at the Public Defender Service for the District of Columbia, where she was a felony one-trial attorney, representing indigent clients in hundreds of cases, from misdemeanor charges of theft, assault, and drug possession, to kidnapping, child sexual abuse, and homicide. Some of her cases received nationwide media attention. At age 42, Professor Amuna became the first Nigerian faculty member at Harvard Law. She authored the article, Rethinking the Neighborhood Watch, How Lessons from the Nigerian Village Can Creatively Empower the Community to Assist Poor Single Mothers in America, which was published in the American University Journal of Gender, Social Policy, and the Law. Among her recognitions, Professor Amuna has received Harvard's Dean's Award for Excellence, acknowledging her outstanding service as a student supervisor, lecturer, coach, and mentor, and the Southern Public Defender Training Center Outstanding Faculty Mentor of the Year Award. She earned her bachelor's in communication from California State University, her master's in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School, and her JD from George Washington University, where she won the J.B. Shapiro Prize for Public Interest. But perhaps top among all her great accomplishments is that she is the proud mother of Adozi in Class 1 and his sister, Efanye. Please join me in welcoming to this morning's Thanksgiving exercises, Professor Delia Amuna.
I am so hungry. What am I doing here? Where is my Nana? I looked around for the voice and my eyes rested on the petite, frail little girl in the jail cell. I was shocked. Are you Anaya? I asked. She nodded yes. I motioned to the guard who opened the door to the jail cell and let me in. The guard closed the door behind me and I sat next to this petite 9-year-old girl. My blood began to boil as I read the police report. You see, she was a third grader who, while in English class, had refused to answer a question from the teacher. As Anaya got frustrated, the teacher also got frustrated. So the teacher told her she was going to send her to the office. Anaya picked up a book and threw it to the floor towards the teacher. The teacher, a white woman, called the security officer into the classroom. Anaya, a 9-year-old Black girl who weighed about 80 pounds, was then handcuffed, put in the back of a police car, and transported to the District of Columbia Superior Court on a charge of assault with a dangerous weapon book. When the judge came into the courtroom for the arraignment, an arraignment, by the way, is an official entry of charges against a person. The judge asked me a question. Counsel, where is your client? You see, Anaya was so short and so tiny that the judge couldn't even see her above the lectern. And so I bent down and I picked up Anaya and showed her to the judge. And then I put her back down. I then argued for the case to be dismissed prior to arraignment. The judge and the prosecutor all agreed that dismissal prior to arraignment was the right thing to do. Anaya had no idea what transpired in the courtroom that day. She didn't understand what my role was as her lawyer. All she knew was that she was hungry, wanted her grandmother, and wanted to go home. After the case was dismissed, I took her to her home and discovered that she lived with her 56-year-old grandmother. Anaya is a sweet little girl with developmental differences and was constantly bullied at school. Uh, with the help of a social worker and a special education attorney from my office, we got Anaya the resources she needed to overcome housing and food insecurity. And we made sure she received the specialized classes she needed to succeed in school. Ironically, she wanted to grow up to be a teacher. There was never a reason for Anaya to have been arrested, nor for her to experience the trauma, the shame, and indignation she endured that day. But you see, Anaya is one of hundreds of people I have had the honor and privilege of representing and fighting for over the last 22 years. It is how I make my life count when I represent marginalized people. Because of people like Anaya, I wake up every morning determined to live my life on purpose, determined to make a difference, determined to make my life count for good. So good morning. Today, I want to share with you on the topic, make your life count for good. I want to start by thanking Mr. Brennan and Ms. Berg for the invitation, and Mr. Brennan for the kind introduction. It is truly an honor to speak with you this morning. I want to thank all of those of you who are fully awake at this hour. I know many of you at various stages of consciousness, but be thankful that you're not a dozier who has to listen to me because I'm his mom. In any event, thank you for being here. So I have two goals today. First, I am under strict instructions not to embarrass my wonderful and amazing son, Edozie, although I suspect that ship has already sailed. And like the story I told you about Anaya, I want to give you a little insight into my life, what I do and why it matters. And along the way, I hope that I inspire you to make your life count for good. I stand before you as somebody who's discovered the joys and rewards, and yes, the anguish of living my life on purpose. I was born 47 years ago in London, England, to a Nigerian father and a Sierra Leonean mother. In March 1992, I emigrated to the United States, landing in Los Angeles, right in the middle of the Rodney King riots. For those of you unfamiliar with Rodney King was a Black man who was brutally assaulted on video by 4 white police officers, and those officers were tried and subsequently acquitted by an all-white jury. See, my understanding of justice and what it meant to be Black in America was primarily shaped by that case. It was during that time and the fact that my brother had gotten himself into some legal trouble in England that ignited in me a desire to be a lawyer, but not just any kind of lawyer, a public defender, a lawyer who's paid by the government to defend people in court if they cannot afford to pay for a lawyer. I was a public defender in the District of Columbia for close to a decade. And as Mr. Brennan said, defended and represented hundreds of indigent clients, trying cases from everything from trespass to murders. As a public defender, I truly entered spaces where I witnessed firsthand the realities of what it meant to be impecunious. I saw many families battling mental health concerns, learning disabilities, while fending off aggressive police intrusion, harassment, and brutality. I observed firsthand the role of race and racism in the criminal legal system, how unjust, how unfair, and how inequitable the system is. My career path has allowed me to combine my passions of advocacy and teaching. I taught at DC, the Washington College of Law at American for several years. I then moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts in 2007 to accept a teaching position at Harvard Law School, where I teach classes on mass incarceration, race, gender, and class, criminal law, and theory. And I guide brilliant students as we represent over 175 clients through courts in Massachusetts. By God's grace, I have been blessed to be a law professor at Harvard Law School, an outstanding attorney, an immigrant, a mom to two exceptional teenagers, and above all, to be an unapologetically strong Black woman of faith. And as a result of all these blessings, much is expected of me. So I strive daily to live my life on purpose, and I want to encourage you to do the same. My guiding principle for making my life count is found in the scriptures, Proverbs 31, 8 and 9. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of the destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. That is my calling. That is how I live my life on purpose. So I want to ask you, gentlemen, how do you make your life count? How do you live your life on purpose? How do you make a difference? I want to share 3 recommendations. But before we get into those recommendations, I want to address the elephant in the room. See, on Thursday, most of the country will celebrate Thanksgiving. Traditionally, it's a time of the year for reflection, family gatherings, and an overindulgence in turkey, stuffing, and pie. But this year's celebration is different. Oh, I don't need to tell you that 2020 has been the most unconventional year in recent US history. This year, we have seen the confluence of a raging pandemic, unprecedented political unrest, and a racial justice uprising. 2020 has been one fraught with disinformation and misinformation, economic uncertainty, climate crisis, lack of access to justice, a decline of civil discourse, erosion of democratic norms, a decimation of our ideals and values, and racism in its ugliest and nastiest form. We've witnessed as millions marched in protest to give voice to lives silenced by police brutality, lives like Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Walter Wallace. The list goes on and on. The virus has infected over 12 million people, and over 250,000 of our fellow citizens are dead. At Roxbury Latin, many of our cherished traditions have been jettisoned. Fall sports season canceled. The iconic yard sale gone. The changes have sent shockwaves through our psyche. And as Thanksgiving approaches, we are exhausted and wondering, what do we have to be thankful for? We wonder if our lives have meaning, if our lives have purpose. There's so much that we took for granted pre-pandemic. But as I say, every traumatic event, every setback is an opportunity to reset for greatness. So how can you make your life count for good? First recommendation, develop gratitude as a virtue. Have you ever had to sleep in a car because you were homeless? Imagine if you had to go hungry because you had no food at home. Have you ever had to steal food? Oh, what if you had to worry about being evicted or find yourself sick but couldn't afford treatment? Imagine if you were arrested because you threw a book at the floor out of frustration or harassed by the police because of the color of your skin. Oh, I know what you're thinking. It's cliche to say, be grateful. However, it's cliche to say, be grateful. I understand that. But now, more than ever, if you're going to live a purpose-driven life, you must develop an attitude of gratitude for the privileges you have. When you develop gratitude as an attribute, you turn, you in turn develop empathy and compassion for others. You become less selfish, less judgmental. You recognize that, but for your privileges, you could be that person sitting in a jail cell, that person standing in the line to the food bank, that person without heat. Gratitude compels you to take stock of what you have and be truly thankful. Gratitude compels you to ask the question, how can I serve others? What can I do to make a difference? Not just on Thanksgiving, but every day. Recommendation number 2, say it now. Make your life count by speaking up and speaking out. On May 4th, 2017, I was in court in Roxbury with my 19-year-old client, Tony. After a contested magistrate clerk hearing, his case was dismissed. It was a case that should not have been in court anyway. Yet we had appeared several times because while in an argument with his mother, Tony shoved her out of the way, slammed the door came off the hinges, and he was now charged with assault and battery and malicious destruction of property. He should have been in treatment and not in the court system. Well, after his case was dismissed, I excitedly turned to him and I said, one more case to go. We can win this thing. He had a solemn look. Then he said to me, I feel like I'm not going to make it to the next court date. I chided him. I told him he had a lot of potential, a baby on the way. I told him that I will zealously advocate for him. I reminded him of all the obstacles he had overcome to get to that point. I told him how proud I was of him, and I ended the conversation like I always do. Stay out of trouble and don't do anything stupid. He smiled, shrugged, and thanked me and left the courthouse. It was the last time I saw him alive. 48 hours later, he was dead. He had been stabbed to death on Cross Street in Boston. I attended his funeral a couple of weeks later, and there were hundreds, at least 200 people there mourning. I didn't know these many people knew him. See, he slept in cars. He went hungry most days. It was so very confusing. I recalled my last conversation with him. Was there anything I wanted him to know that I didn't say? Will Tony have been utterly shocked to hear that these people cared about him? During this pandemic, people are dying alone and afraid without family and friends. So I implore you, if you have words of appreciation, say them now. Affirm your friends now. Tell your mom and your dad how much you appreciate and thank them now. Tell your siblings you love them now. Don't put off that conversation that needs to happen. When you see acts of injustice, racism, xenophobia, speak up against it now. It is critical that you speak up because being silent means being complicit. Don't stay silent when words must be uttered. The truth is, you may never get another chance to speak up again. And in keeping with my own advice, I want to publicly thank a few people. Han Tran, Ethan Fan's mom, Mildred Gideon, Aiden Gideon's mom. Thank you for being co-conspirators on this journey, this RL journey. Nicole, Hamina, Miriam, Pam, Alicia, Zane, and Taisha, Roxbury Latin moms, women who saw a need to address issues of inclusion and diversity at RL and actually did something about it. Women who have become sisters and friends for life. I love you all. To Dr. K, who though he is retired, occasionally emails Adozie to remind him that Tottenham Hotspur are a much better team than Adozie's beloved Chelsea. To Mr. Job and the incomparable and remarkable Mr. Reed, two gentlemen who have taught and mentored my baby boy Adozie to be the best he can be at RL. I thank you. My third and final recommendation on how you can make your life count for good. Let your actions speak louder than your words. See, my work is all about serving disadvantaged folks like Anaya and Tony. It means I get to volunteer at soup kitchens and jails and homeless shelter, not only at Thanksgiving, but throughout the year. And so as you sit around the Thanksgiving table, I urge you to think of concrete and consequential ways to make your life count for good. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "You cannot do a kindness too soon because you never know how soon it will be too late." Now listen, making your life count for good is not without challenges. I wish I could tell you that when you make a decision to make your life count for good, that life will be easy. In making my life count, I have encountered numerous heartbreaking moments. I've lost clients to overdose and street violence. I have been called the N-word to my face. I have walked into courtrooms in Quincy, for example, where court personnel mistake me for the defendant or a social worker or the language interpreter. Now, I have a choice to allow those micro and macro aggressions to ruin my day, make me upset and deter me from the work I do. But instead, they simply spur me on to kick ass whenever I get the chance to do so in the courtroom. I am more determined than ever to zealously represent my clients with every ounce of my being. As a Roxbury Latin boy, you've been taught by some of the best teachers in the country. You have had opportunities to travel and explore the world in ways that other boys can only dream of. With those privileges come responsibility. And so as you celebrate Thanksgiving and for the fact that you have so much to be thankful for, I implore you to think of concrete and consequential ways to make your life count for good. You may have to go against the grain. Standing up for what is right may make you unpopular, but as long as you can look back on your day and on your life and say, I made a difference, my life counted, then you will have accomplished something truly great, something virtuous. And that should be the legacy of every Roxbury Latin boy. Thank you and have an excellent Thanksgiving.
Professor Amuna, thank you for the model of your life. Thank you for your inspiring words. And thank you for reminding us that our lives need to count for good. We are very grateful that your son has brought you to us. And we wish you too a happy Thanksgiving. I would ask everyone now, if you could, please, to pray with me. Now thank we all our God with heart and hands and voices, who wondrous things hath done, in whom this world rejoices, who from our mother's arms hath blessed us on our way with countless gifts of love, and still is ours today. Amen. And now I'd ask you in a way that makes sense to you wherever you are and with whomever you are, to pass the peace. I extend it to all of you. I wish you a happy break. Let's offer a boisterous rendition of America the Beautiful. Have a great break. Thank you.